The fluorescent lights of Lenox Hill Hospital flickered softly above Sienna Marlowe as she lay trembling in the delivery room, her breaths uneven, her gown damp with sweat. The cries of her newborn twins filled the sterile space, 2 tiny lives she'd fought so hard to bring into the world. For a brief moment, warmth washed over her. She thought Grayson Holt, her husband, would walk in, take her hand, wipe her tears, and whisper that everything was going to be okay. Instead, the door swung open, and he stepped in wearing his tailored charcoal suit, looking as if he'd come straight from a board meeting rather than the birth of his own children. His expression was ice. "Sienna," he said flatly, not even glancing at the babies. He held a leather folder in one hand, a folder she recognized from his office, where he kept merger contracts and termination papers. Her pulse spiked. What is that?" she whispered. He placed the folder on her lap. "Divorce papers." Her blood ran cold. "Grayson, I just gave birth. Our children—" "They'll be fine," he snapped. "But I can't keep living like this. Your fragile emotions, your constant needs, the money I'm pouring down the drain, I'm done." Tears fogged her vision. "You promised we were a family." "A mistake I'm correcting." He pulled a Mont Blanc pen from his pocket and clicked it with the same ease he used signing off million-dollar deals. "Sign them, Sienna." She looked toward the incubators where the twins slept, so small they seemed made of glass. Her heart clenched. "You're leaving us? Right now? After everything?" A shadow of impatience crossed his face. "Actually, someone is waiting for me." The name hit her like a blade. Aubrey Langford. The woman whose perfume Sienna had smelled on his shirts. The woman rumored to be the key to saving his dying company. "Grayson, please don't do this," she begged, voice cracking. But he was already turning away. "You'll survive, Sienna. You're good at clinging to things." The door closed behind him with a soft click. Too soft for the destruction it carried. Sienna collapsed against the pillows, her sobs silent but shaking her whole body. Alone. Abandoned. Minutes after childbirth. A nurse rushed in, startled. "Honey, are you okay? What happened?" Sienna couldn't speak. She could only clutch the papers, her tears staining the ink. Far down the hallway, Grayson strode confidently toward the elevator, where Aubrey waited in a white coat and diamond earrings, smiling as if she'd won. She hadn't. Not yet. Because at that same moment, outside Sienna's room, a man in a navy suit quietly approached the nurse's station, asking for her. His briefcase bore the crest of Marlowe Global Holdings, and he carried news that would change everything. "I'm here for Mrs. Sienna Marlowe," he said. "She is now the sole heir to a $68 billion empire." Grayson had just divorced the richest woman he'd ever meet, and he didn't know it yet. Sienna Marlowe lay in the dim postpartum room, the hum of machines blending with the soft whimpers of her newborn twins. The world felt muffled, as if wrapped in thick cotton. Her eyes were swollen, her throat raw from holding in too many tears she hadn't been allowed to release. She had imagined this moment, becoming a mother, would be the beginning of everything good. Instead, it felt like the end of whatever life she thought she had. A billing nurse stepped in with a clipboard. "Mrs. Marlowe, I'm sorry to bother you, but we need to confirm payment arrangements." "Payment?" Sienna blinked. "My husband, he usually—" The nurse hesitated, sympathy softening her features. "Your husband removed his name from all billing files this morning."
Sienna's stomach twisted painfully. "But he just left. He didn't speak to you. How?" "He updated everything online." The nurse bit her lip. "It includes the insurance account." The words hit harder than the divorce papers. Grayson hadn't simply walked out. He had erased himself from every responsibility as efficiently as deleting an email. Sienna instinctively cradled her babies. Her son stirred with a faint cry, and her daughter's tiny fingers curled around the edge of her blanket. They were innocent, fragile, depending entirely on her. The nurse lowered her voice.
"If you need financial counseling, we can arrange—" "No," Sienna whispered. "I'll manage." But she didn't know how. Her job at the startup barely covered rent. Her savings were thin. The twins needed diapers, formula, medical checkups, and she had nothing prepared. Nothing except heartbreak. When the nurse left, Sienna tried to stand, but nearly collapsed as her knees buckled. The emergency C-section had left her weak, trembling with every movement. She gripped the rail at the side of the bed, breathing through the pain. A janitor mopping nearby paused. "Ma'am, need help?" "I'm okay," she lied. The truth was, she wasn't okay. She was a new mother, abandoned, penniless, and so overwhelmed she could barely inhale without feeling the sting of betrayal spreading across her ribs. She sank back onto the bed, pressing a trembling hand over her chest. Why wasn't she enough for Grayson? Why weren't the babies enough? Her mind raced with every cruel thing he'd said. "You're too emotional. You drain me. You're holding me back." She'd believed him, too often, for too long. A soft knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. A nurse peeked in. "Mrs. Marlowe, there's a man asking for you. Says it's urgent." Sienna stiffened. Fear flared. Was it Grayson? Had he returned to take the babies? Her pulse hammered. But when the door opened wider, the man who stepped in wasn't Grayson. He wore a perfectly cut navy suit, his expression respectful, his posture calm. His eyes met hers with a gravity that told her he wasn't here for something small. "Mrs. Marlowe," he said gently. "I'm Landon Pierce, representing Marlowe Global Holdings." Sienna frowned. I don't understand." Landon opened a sleek black briefcase and set a thick envelope on the bedside table.
"This contains the final will of Eleanor Marlowe, your grandmother. You are her sole heir." Her breath caught.
"My grandmother? She died years ago."
"No," Landon said softly. "She died last week." The room spun. Her world hadn't ended. It was only beginning. "And, Mrs. Marlowe, you've just inherited $68 billion. Sienna stared at him, realizing her life was about to shift in a way even Grayson could never imagine. The envelope on the bedside table seemed to glow under the muted hospital lights, as if it radiated a weight far heavier than paper. Sienna Marlowe stared at it, numb, her mind struggling to process Landon Pierce's words. Sole heir. $68 billion. Her grandmother. The grandmother she'd believed was long gone, a distant memory from childhood summers she barely remembered.
What do you mean she passed last week?" Sienna asked, voice barely above a whisper. Landon pulled up a chair beside her bed. His posture was formal, but his eyes held a softness she desperately needed. Eleanor Marlowe lived very privately in her later years. She disconnected from most of the family, but she kept records, letters, photos, even video messages for you. "For me?" Sienna blinked. "But she never contacted me. I thought she didn't want anything to do with us." "She did," Landon said quietly. "Your mother chose distance."
not Eleanor. The words hit like a tremor beneath her ribs. Her mother had always told her their family was small, broken, that there was no one else left in the world for them. And Sienna had believed it, because what else could she do? Eleanor kept track of your life, Landon continued.
Your school, your jobs, even your marriage.
His jaw tightened slightly, the first sign that he knew what Grayson had done. Sienna swallowed hard.
So she knew everything?
Yes. He hesitated. And she prepared everything for the day you might need her. A new wave of emotion rose in her chest, grief, disbelief, and something she hadn't felt in hours. Hope. Landon opened the envelope and slid out a thick document sealed with a silver emblem. This is the official will. It names you as the sole inheritor of Marlowe Global Holdings, its subsidiaries, properties, and equity. Sienna stared. This can't be real. It is very real, he said gently. You're now one of the wealthiest women in the country. The babies stirred in their bassinets, their tiny cries filling the room again. Sienna reached for them instinctively, tears welling in her eyes. Hours ago, she'd believed she'd have to choose between diapers and rent. Now, the world had flipped on its axis. Landon's voice softened. Mrs. Marlowe, I know this is overwhelming, but you won't face it alone. I've been entrusted to guide you. Sienna shook her head. Please, call me Sienna. He nodded once. Then you may call me Landon. For the first time, she almost smiled. A knock sounded at the door. A nurse peeked in nervously. Miss Marlowe? There's someone insisting on seeing you. He says it's urgent. Sienna's stomach twisted. Who? The nurse stepped aside. Grayson Holt strode into the room, disheveled, tense, and with a desperate gleam she had never seen before. Sienna, he breathed. We need to talk. Now. Grayson had lost her once, but what he wanted now would change everything again. Grayson Holt stood at the doorway as if he had every right to be there, as if he hadn't walked out on his wife minutes after she brought 2 children into the world. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his hair slightly disheveled, probably from rushing back once he heard the news. His eyes darted from Sienna to Landon, then to the envelope on the bedside table. There it was. The moment he realized he'd made the biggest mistake of his life. Sienna, he said breathlessly, why didn't you tell me? Her stomach tightened. Tell you what? She asked, her voice thin but steady. He stepped closer. Don't do that. Don't pretend you didn't know. Your grandmother, your fortune, everything. You should have trusted me. Landon rose slowly, positioning himself between them with an air of calm authority. Mr. Holt, this is not an appropriate time. Mrs. Marlowe just delivered 2 infants. You need to leave. Grayson ignored him entirely. I came back because I regret how things ended, he said, softening his tone, trying to slip back into the charm he once used to win her. We can fix this. Our family deserves a chance. Our family? Sienna's laugh was weak, disbelieving. You abandoned us before the ink on their hospital bracelets was even dry. I was overwhelmed, Grayson insisted. I reacted out of stress. My company— Your company, she echoed. Always your company. The twins began to fuss, their cries echoing like tiny accusations. Sienna reached for them, instinctively shielding them from the man who had walked out on them without a second thought. His gaze flickered, calculating. We should be together for their sake. A stable home. You mean my inheritance, she cut in. That's what brought you back. The mask slipped from his face for a split second, long enough for her to see the truth she had tried to ignore for years. Grayson didn't love her. He loved what she could give him. Sienna, he murmured, lowering his voice, as if they were co-conspirators. Do you realize what we could build together? With Marlowe Global behind us, we could save Holt Dynamics, expand it, dominate every sector. This isn't a business pitch, she snapped. These are our children. He stepped forward. I want to be a father. You weren't a father for the first hour of their lives. Grayson's jaw tightened. I made a mistake. A mistake, she repeated coldly, is forgetting an anniversary. What you did was a choice. Landon placed a protective hand on the bed rail. Mr. Holt, this conversation is over. Grayson's eyes darkened. You think you can keep me out of my own children's lives? I'll fight for them. I'll fight for everything. Sienna's breath stilled. Grayson leaned in, voice low and venomous. And trust me, courts listen to CEOs, not unstable mothers who just inherited more money than they know how to handle. Landon stiffened. You should leave. Now! Grayson smirked and straightened his jacket. This isn't over, Sienna. He turned toward the door, but Landon caught the flicker of fear in Sienna's eyes. A storm was coming. And Grayson had just declared war on the woman he once threw away, not knowing she now had the power to destroy him. The following afternoon, a black Mercedes S-Class pulled up to the private entrance of the Marlowe Tower on Fifth Avenue. Sienna held her twins close, their tiny bodies bundled in soft hospital blankets. She still felt sore from the surgery, still emotionally bruised from Grayson's attack. But Landon had insisted she shouldn't return to her small Brooklyn apartment. Mrs. Marlowe, he said gently as he stepped out of the car to help her. This is your home now. Home. The word felt foreign, trembling on the edge of disbelief. The sliding glass doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing a marble lobby so pristine she almost hesitated to breathe. Crystal chandeliers glittered overhead. A concierge in a tailored uniform bowed slightly when he saw her. Welcome back, Ms. Marlowe, he said warmly. Sienna stiffened. Back? Landon's voice was low. Your grandmother lived here for decades. The staff knew you as her only living heir. Her heartbeat faltered. Her mother had never mentioned any of it. They entered the private elevator, which required only a facial scan. The machine blinked, analyzing her features, then turned green. Welcome, Sienna. The elevator hummed upward, smooth as silk. When the doors slid open, she stepped into a penthouse that looked like it belonged on the cover of Architectural Digest. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Manhattan skyline, bathed in golden afternoon light. Plush, white furniture, modern art pieces, and glass shelving filled the space with an elegance that felt impossible to touch. A grand piano sat in one corner, next to a reading nook stocked with leather-bound books. Sienna's breath hitched. This was hers? And now it's yours, Landon replied softly. She walked forward slowly, each step stirring memories she didn't know she still had. The faint smell of vanilla candles, the soft jazz playing from the speakers, a vase of lilies just like the ones her grandmother used to keep. She swallowed hard. Why didn't she ever reach out? Landon hesitated. Your mother kept you away. Eleanor respected her choice, but she never stopped caring. There are letters, videos, everything she saved for you. Tears blurred Sienna's vision. For the first time since the divorce papers hit her lap, she didn't feel completely abandoned.
A soft chime echoed from down the hall. Landon adjusted his watch. "The nursery," he said. "Your grandmother prepared it years ago, just in case." He led her to a room painted in warm creams and golds. 2 cribs sat side by side, handcrafted with tiny initials carved into them. SM. For the children of the Marlowe legacy. Sienna pressed a hand to her mouth. "She knew. She believed I'd become a mother someday." "She believed you deserved everything life tried to deny you," Landon said. The twins let out small cries, as if sensing the room was meant for them.
Sienna laid them gently in their cribs. The sight brought a swell of emotion so overwhelming it merely buckled her knees. For the first time, she felt safe. But the peace shattered when Landon's phone buzzed sharply. His expression changed, darkened. "What is it?" Sienna asked. He exhaled slowly. "It's Grayson. He just filed an emergency petition in court." Her blood ran cold. "For temporary custody of the twins. And he was using her new inheritance as the reason she was unfit to raise them." Sienna's knees nearly gave out. She gripped the edge of one of the cribs to steady herself as the twins slept peacefully, unaware their father had just weaponized their existence. "Temporary custody?" Her voice cracked. "On what grounds?" Landon hesitated, as if searching for the least damaging word. "He claims you're emotionally unstable, that you're overwhelmed, that you can't handle the inheritance responsibly, let alone newborns." Sienna felt the room tilt. "He left me hours after I gave birth, and I'm the unstable one?" Landon's jaw tightened. "He's desperate. Holt Dynamics is collapsing. If he gains custody, or even partial custody, he can leverage your assets. Investors would see him as tied to Marlowe Global. It would save him." Her heart pounded painfully. She'd expected pettiness, maybe guilt-tripping, but not this. Not her children. "He's trying to take the only good thing I have left," she whispered. "No," Landon said firmly, stepping closer. "He's trying. That doesn't mean he'll succeed." Sienna sank onto the velvet ottoman beside the window, staring out at Manhattan's glittering skyline. Hours ago, she was terrified of rent. Now, she was terrified of losing her babies. The shift was dizzying, cruel. "What chance do I have?" she murmured. "Grayson knows the system. He has lawyers on retainer, connections, judges he's donated to." "You have something he never will," Landon said gently. Sienna looked up. "What?" "The truth." She let out a shaken breath, fingers twisting in her lap. "Truth doesn't matter to people like him. He's charming. He lies without blinking. And her voice fractured. "I still look like the woman he broke." Landon crouched so he was eye level. His voice softened. "Sienna, listen to me. Your vulnerability isn't weakness. It's evidence. The court will see what he did. Walking out moments after birth, removing himself from insurance, filing a petition when you're still healing from surgery. These aren't the actions of a father. They're the actions of a man trying to save himself." She didn't respond. Her throat was too tight. Landon continued, "I'll bring in the best legal team Marlowe has." "Not corporate attorneys, family law specialists. And we'll gather everything, every message he sent, every disappearance, every financial move he made. You won't face this alone." A tear slid down her cheek. "Why are you helping me this much?" His expression flickered with something she didn't yet recognize. "Because your grandmother wanted someone loyal by your side. And because," he paused, "because you deserve someone in your corner." Before she could answer,
a sharp buzz echoed from the penthouse's security monitor. Landon rose, tapping the screen. His face darkened as the footage appeared. Grayson Holt stood in the lobby downstairs, flanked by 2 attorneys and a cameraman clearly from a tabloid site. "He brought the press?" Sienna whispered in horror. "Yes," Landon said, voice like steel. "He's building a narrative." On the screen, Grayson looked directly into the camera and said clearly, "I'm here to rescue my children from an unstable mother." Sienna gasped. Her world tilted again. And he wasn't alone. A woman stepped forward from behind him, and Sienna recognized her instantly. Aubrey. Sienna felt her chest tighten as she watched the security feed. Aubrey Langford stepped into frame beside Grayson, wearing a cream-colored coat and a calculated smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Reporters swarmed around them, microphones raised, cameras flashing like angry sparks. "What is she doing here?" Sienna whispered, her palms growing cold. Landon exhaled slowly. Aligning herself with Grayson. If Holt Dynamics collapses, her father will cut her off.
She needs a narrative that protects her reputation.
On screen, Aubrey clutched Grayson's arm, gazing sympathetically into the cameras. "This is a heartbreaking situation," she said sweetly. "Mr. Holt simply wants what's best for his newborn children. He's deeply concerned for their safety." Safety. As if Sienna were a threat, rather than the woman he abandoned hours after surgery. A reporter shouted, "Is it true the mother recently inherited billions? Is that why you're here?" Aubrey tilted her head, faux sadness clouding her expression. "Money changes people, and sudden wealth can destabilize already fragile individuals." Sienna staggered backward. "She's painting me as unstable, as unfit." "She's building a case," Landon growled. "A manipulative, disgusting one. And they're using your inheritance as ammunition." Before he could say more, the penthouse intercom buzzed sharply. "Mr. Pierce?" The concierge's voice crackled through, strained. "Mr. Holt is demanding access. He says he's legally entitled to see the children." "Absolutely not," Landon snapped. "Do not let him up." "Yes, sir." Sienna's breath trembled. "I can't face him, Landon. Not like this, not with all those cameras outside." "You won't," he said firmly. "He won't get near you." But Sienna knew Grayson. He didn't quit, not when he wanted something. And right now, he wanted control over her, over the children, over her inheritance. The elevator dinged somewhere deep in the building. Sienna startled. "Did he get through?" "No," Landon said quickly. "You're safe. He doesn't have clearance." Safety. The word felt fragile, like a bubble waiting to burst. The twins began to cry in the nursery. Sienna moved toward them, lifting her daughter first, holding the tiny body against her chest. Her son's cries followed, desperate and sharp. As she rocked them gently, she whispered, "I won't let anyone take you away. I promise." Behind her, Landon paced, his phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, activate the legal team immediately. File for protective measures, and get a restraining directive drafted. I want it ready before morning." A pause. "No, she's not going anywhere near him." Sienna watched him, struck by the steadiness in his voice. For the first time in years, a man was fighting for her, not for power, not for money, but for her protection. Landon hung up and turned toward her. "He's escalating," he said. "So we will too." Before she could answer, the penthouse lights flickered, then went completely dark. Sienna froze. "What's happening?" Landon's voice dropped to a whisper. "Backup generators should have kicked in."
Someone tampered with the system. A moment later, the elevator in the hallway dinged, but they hadn't called it. Footsteps echoed toward the penthouse door. And someone, or several someones, were coming straight for Sienna and the twins. The penthouse was swallowed in darkness, the Manhattan skyline glowing faintly through the floor-to-ceiling windows. For a moment, all Sienna Marlowe could hear was her own heartbeat pounding in her ears and the soft whimpers of her newborn twins. The blackout wasn't accidental. She knew it. Landon knew it. "Stay close to me," Landon whispered, stepping between her and the entrance. Sienna clutched her daughter to her chest, while her son lay swaddled in a bassinet she pulled close with her free hand. Panic surged up her spine like ice water. "Who could override the building's system?" she whispered. Landon's jaw flexed. "Someone with access codes."
Or someone who paid the right person, meaning Grayson.
A faint hum passed through the penthouse walls, the elevator descending again. Someone was using it repeatedly, trying different floors, testing access. "They're scanning for entry points," Landon murmured. Sienna's breath trembled. "Why would he go this far?" "Because he's losing everything," Landon replied. "And desperate men are reckless." Suddenly, a dull thud echoed from the hallway. Then another, heavy, deliberate, like someone testing the penthouse door. Sienna stepped back instinctively. Landon picked up his phone. "Security isn't responding. Someone jammed internal communication." The thuds grew louder, more insistent. Sienna's voice cracked. "He's going to break in." "No," Landon said, though his tight expression betrayed uncertainty. "He can't override the manual lock." At that moment, the lock clicked.
A cold, metallic sound. Released. Sienna's blood ran cold.
"Landon, behind me!"
His voice sharpened like steel. The penthouse door creaked open 2 inches. A shadow moved in the sliver of light from the hallway emergency lamps. Then a woman's voice drifted inside.
"Oh, Sienna, darling, are you home?"
Aubrey. Landon stiffened. She's using her father's connections. They got the override code. The door swung open wider, and Aubrey stepped in, heels clicking on the marble floor as if she owned the place. 2 men in dark suits followed, private security hired by the Langford family.
"Well,"
Aubrey said cheerfully, brushing imaginary dust from her coat.
"this place is stunning. I can see why you'd want to keep the children here. Shame you're overwhelmed."
Sienna's trembling eased, replaced by a sharp flare of anger.
"Get out of my home!"
Aubrey smiled sweetly.
Grayson just wants to see his children. The press downstairs needs a statement, you understand.
"This is illegal," Landon snapped. "You're trespassing!" "Oh, please," Aubrey laughed lightly. "Judges adore Grayson. You're a new billionaire with no stability and postpartum hormones. Do you know how quickly courts remove children from fragile environments?" Sienna's vision blurred with fury. "I'm not fragile." "No?" Aubrey stepped closer, eyes glinting. "Then prove it." Before Sienna could respond, her son began to cry, a loud, distressed wail that pierced the tension. Aubrey's smile widened cruelly. "See? Even he knows something's wrong." Landon moved protectively in front of Sienna. "If you take one step closer, I will—" Aubrey lifted a hand. Her security guards reached inside their coats. Not weapons. Documents. Custody documents. Pre-signed, stamped, time-sensitive. Aubrey smirked.
You have 2 choices, sweetheart. Hand over the babies voluntarily, or watch Grayson do it publicly in front of every camera in Manhattan.
Sienna felt her heart shatter, then harden, because at that moment her phone buzzed in her pocket.
A message flashed across the screen. "We know what Grayson did the night you were in surgery. Call me. MGH." Legal Division. Sienna inhaled sharply. Proof. They found proof. And what that proof exposed would blow Grayson and Aubrey's entire plan to pieces. The buzzing phone in Sienna's pocket felt like a lifeline. Her fingers trembled as she pulled it out, the screen glowing with the message from Marlowe Global's legal division. Landon leaned in, eyes narrowing. "What does it say?" he whispered. Sienna swallowed hard. "They found something. Something Grayson did the night I was in surgery." Aubrey arched an eyebrow, amused. "Oh!"
Is that supposed to scare us? But for the first time since she entered the penthouse, uncertainty flickered across her expression. Landon lifted the phone gently from Sienna's hand, reading the message twice. His brows hardened, sharpening with intent. This could be a turning point. Aubrey laughed. "Please, nothing you find will matter. Judges trust fathers, successful ones, and Grayson is—" "You mean was," Landon corrected. "Holt Dynamics is collapsing." Aubrey's jaw twitched, annoyance cracking her polished composure. Sienna took a shaky breath. "I need to call them. Now!" But before she could dial, the security guards stepped closer, blocking her path. Aubrey held up a manicured hand. "No calls," she said. "We're in negotiation mode, sweetheart. Wouldn't want you spreading false accusations." Anger surged hot in Sienna's veins. "Step aside." "No," Aubrey said coolly. "You're overwhelmed. I'm helping you." Landon moved forward, voice like a warning blade. "Touch her or interfere further, and I will have both of you arrested within the hour." The guards hesitated. Aubrey didn't. She smirked. "You think your corporate clout scares me? My father owns half the judges in Los Angeles." "This isn't Los Angeles," Landon replied calmly. "And Marlowe Global owns the floor you're standing on." Aubrey went silent. Sienna used the distraction to hit call. The line connected instantly. "Ms. Marlowe," a lawyer's voice came through. "We uncovered surveillance footage from the hospital's restricted wing. You need to hear this." "What footage?" Sienna whispered. "The night you were in surgery, Mr. Holt wasn't in the waiting room. He wasn't filling paperwork. He wasn't even in the building." Sienna's breath hitched. "Then where was he?" "In the parking garage," the lawyer said, "with Ms. Langford." All color drained from Aubrey's face. The lawyer continued. "They were filmed arguing about your convenient pregnancy, his need to finalize the merger through her family, and an offhand remark that he hoped the birth would take long so he could slip out unnoticed." Sienna felt physically ill. Aubrey snapped. "He told me you trapped him. You were the problem, not him." The lawyer wasn't done. "And there's more. He used your medical emergency to fabricate a business excuse, leaving the hospital to meet with Wells Capital representatives, insinuating he was acting as the future son-in-law." Aubrey gasped. "He said that?" Landon's expression turned lethal. "We can subpoena every second of that footage." Aubrey staggered back, the confidence draining from her as fast as the blood in her cheeks. This changes nothing." "Oh, it changes everything," Landon said quietly. Sienna straightened, something fierce awakening beneath the exhaustion and grief.
You broke into my home. You threatened me. And now you want to pretend none of this matters.
Aubrey's lips trembled. Landon stepped forward. "Leave, before we make this very public." Aubrey hesitated. But then the elevator dinged again. This time, it wasn't security. It wasn't legal. It was Grayson. And he had no idea the truth was already unraveling around him. And when he walked through that door, he would discover that Sienna finally had the weapon to destroy him. The elevator door slid open with a polished chime, and Grayson Holt stepped into the penthouse as if he still belonged there.
His suit was immaculate, his posture confident, but his eyes carried that familiar arrogance. A man who always assumed the world would bend for him. His gaze swept the room, landing on Sienna, then on Aubrey, who looked pale and shaken. For the first time, confusion cracked his mask. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice low but laced with irritation. "Why are the lights out? Why is everyone acting like there's a crisis?" Landon stepped forward. "Because there is." Grayson ignored him entirely and focused on Sienna instead. "Baby, listen. Don't," she whispered. "Don't call me that." He blinked, thrown for a moment, then straightened his shoulders. "Fine, Sienna. We need to talk privately." "Anything you have to say, you can say here," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. A flicker of annoyance crossed his face. "I know things were said in the heat of the moment.
I reacted poorly at the hospital. But I still care about you. About the twins."
"You left before you even held them," she said quietly. Grayson flinched. "I was overwhelmed. My company is facing catastrophic losses. I needed time to think." "And Aubrey?" Sienna asked. Aubrey stiffened. Grayson hesitated. "She was helping me, supporting me. Something you weren't capable of." Landon scoffed. "Should we show him the footage, Sienna? Or the recorded statements? Or—" "Footage?" Grayson snapped. "What footage?" Sienna swallowed the rising ache in her throat. "The footage of you in the hospital parking garage, with Aubrey, while I was in surgery." For the first time, true panic sparked in his eyes. No, that's taken out of context." "Really?" Sienna whispered. "Because you told her you wished the birth would take longer so you could finish your deal with Wells Capital." Aubrey gasped again.
"You told me she trapped you, that she faked the timing. You lied to both of us, Grayson."
He turned on her instantly. "You were the one who said—"
"I said nothing," Aubrey snapped. "You said everything because you were desperate."
Landon folded his arms. "And now everything you said is in our possession." Grayson paled. "You can't use that in court. That's private property, illegally obtained." "It was recorded by hospital security," Landon said smoothly. "Completely legal." Grayson's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. "You tried to take my children," Sienna said, stepping forward. Her voice was no longer shaking. It was steel. "You called me unstable, unfit. You tried to break into my home." Grayson lifted his chin. "I did what I had to do." "No," she said softly. "You did what you always do.
You chose yourself." The twins began crying again, as if sensing the tension.
Sienna turned toward them instinctively, and Grayson took a half step forward. "I want to see them," he said. "No," Sienna replied. "Not tonight, not like this." Grayson's voice lowered into a dangerous whisper. "Then tomorrow we settle this in court." Landon stepped between them. "Perfect. We'll bring everything." But Grayson wasn't done. He slowly smirked. "You think you've won because you have proof? You have no idea what I still control." Sienna felt a cold shiver trace her spine. And Grayson's next move would be so low, so cruel, it would push Sienna into a war she never wanted to fight.
The penthouse finally regained power just after Grayson stormed out with Aubrey and her security team trailing behind him. But the restored lights did nothing to ease the heaviness pressing against Sienna's chest.
The moment the elevator doors closed, it felt as if the walls had caved in, trapping her in a storm she didn't ask for. She stood in the middle of the living room, clutching the edge of the marble counter as waves of exhaustion washed over her. The twins slept again, miraculously, thanks to Landon's calm guidance. But she could still hear their earlier cries echoing in her pulse. Landon approached her slowly. "You need to sit. You've been through too much today." "I can't," she whispered. "Grayson isn't done. I saw it in his eyes, that look he gets when he's cornered. He's planning something worse." Landon nodded grimly. "I know, but we'll be ready." Sienna exhaled shakily. "He said he still controls something. What does that mean?" Landon's expression tightened. Holt Dynamics has deep connections in the media, and Grayson has never hesitated to use the press as a weapon. If he can't win in court, he'll try to destroy your reputation publicly. Sienna's stomach twisted.
"He already started." Landon guided her toward the sofa, handing her a glass of water. "Whatever he throws at you, we'll counter it." But the water shook in her hand. "What if he convinces people I'm unstable? What if he gets the court to believe him?" "You have evidence," Landon said, "and you have people who will stand with you." She looked at him then, really looked at him. The way his eyes softened when she cried. The way he positioned himself between her and danger without hesitation. The way he said, "we," instead of "you." No one had ever done that for her. But before the moment could settle, Landon's phone buzzed violently. He checked it, and the color drained from his face. "What?" Sienna whispered. "What happened?" Landon hesitated.
Grayson moved faster than I expected. He handed her the phone. A breaking news headline flashed across a major network, one Grayson had influence over. "Sienna Marlowe's billion-dollar breakdown. Sources claim new heiress struggles with postpartum instability." Sienna's breath caught painfully. The article continued with fabricated quotes from anonymous staff, implying she had erratic mood swings, hallucinations, and emotional episodes, all designed to make her look unfit for motherhood. "He's trying to destroy me," she whispered, voice trembling. "This will spread everywhere." Landon's jaw hardened. "We'll issue a statement immediately, and we'll file a defamation suit." But the phone buzzed again, and again. Notifications flooded in, messages from news outlets requesting interviews, gossip accounts tagging her name, strangers online debating her entire life. Her world wasn't just collapsing privately anymore. Now it was being torn apart publicly.
"What am I supposed to do?" she asked, tears spilling freely.
How do I fight someone who has no limits?
"You stay standing," Landon said, his hand resting gently on hers. "Because he expects you to fall." Before she could answer, a loud knock rattled the penthouse door. Landon rose instantly, tension coiling through his body. "Stay with the babies." Sienna froze. The knock came again, harder this time. And then a voice. "Mrs. Marlowe, this is Child Protective Services. We received an urgent report." Sienna's blood turned to ice. And Grayson had just made the most vicious move of all. He sent the state after her children. Sienna froze as the words echoed through the penthouse. "Child Protective Services. We received an urgent report." Her lungs stopped working. For a full second, she couldn't even blink. Her twins slept in the nursery,
innocent, fragile, unaware that their father had weaponized the state to tear them from the only parent who loved them. Landon stepped toward the door, his voice low and steady. "Stay here. Do not move. And don't say anything until I tell you." Sienna nodded weakly, hugging her arms around herself to keep the panic from pulling her apart. Landon opened the door just enough to speak with the two women standing outside, CPS agents wearing ID badges and serious expressions. "Mr. Pierce," the older agent asked, "we're here because we received an anonymous report claiming the mother is emotionally unstable, possibly experiencing hallucinations, and endangering her newborn twins." Landon didn't flinch. "I'm the legal counsel for Mrs. Marlowe."
These accusations are false and part of an ongoing harassment case.
The younger agent glanced at her tablet. "We were told she recently inherited billions and has been spiraling. There's mention of erratic behavior, blackouts, screaming episodes." "Fabricated," Landon said sharply. "A coordinated attack by her estranged husband." The older agent pressed her lips together. "Be that as it may, we must check the welfare of the children." Sienna's pulse spiked painfully. "Landon," he turned to her, eyes steady. "You're safe. Let us handle it." The agents entered. Sienna stood trembling as they approached, doing everything she could to look composed. But inside, fear clawed at her. The younger agent softened when she saw the twins sleeping peacefully. "They look healthy, well cared for." Sienna exhaled shakily. "I love them more than anything." The older agent studied Sienna closely.
Have you been experiencing any emotional distress?
Landon stepped in. "She is recovering from major surgery less than 48 hours ago. Any mother would be emotional. She is not unstable." Sienna forced herself to speak. "My husband left me moments after I gave birth. He's spreading lies to take my children." The agents exchanged a look, one that acknowledged the cruelty of what they were hearing. "Mrs. Marlowe," the younger one said gently, "have you had any incidents of self-harm or harming the infants?" Sienna gasped. "No, never. I would never hurt them." Landon handed the agents a folder. Documented evidence of the father's abandonment, recordings of his threats, and proof of tonight's break-in attempt. Both women flipped through it, their frowns deepening. After several tense minutes, the older agent finally said, "At this time, we see no grounds for removal,
But we will schedule a follow-up visit in 72 hours.
Relief hit Sienna so hard, her knees nearly buckled. "Thank you," she whispered. The younger agent offered a sympathetic smile. "Just keep doing what you're doing. It's clear you love your children." When the door closed behind them, Sienna sagged into the couch, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Landon sat beside her. "They're safe, for now." "For now," she echoed. "Grayson won't stop." "No," Landon agreed quietly. "And neither will we." Before she could respond, Landon's phone buzzed again. He read the message, and his whole face changed. "What is it?" Sienna asked, fear rising again. He looked up, eyes dark. "It's the board of Marlowe Global. They want an emergency meeting." "What? Why?" Landon swallowed. "They think your public instability might jeopardize the company." Sienna's breath caught.
The war wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional. And if she failed this meeting, she could lose everything her grandmother died to leave her. The next morning, Manhattan was draped in a cold, gray mist as Sienna stepped out of the Mercedes S-Class, her heart pounding beneath her tailored cream coat. Landon walked beside her, carrying a slim leather folder, the kind that seemed to hold entire futures.
The Marlowe Global headquarters towered above them, its glass facade mirroring the city skyline. It was supposed to be hers, her legacy. Yet today, she felt like an intruder about to stand trial. Inside, executives whispered as she passed, their voices barely concealed behind raised phones and hushed tones. That's her? She's the unstable heiress. She inherited billions but can't handle 2 babies. I heard CPS visited her last night. Every word cut deeper than the last.
Landon leaned closer. Ignore them. They don't know the truth. Maybe, Sienna whispered, but perception is everything.
They entered the boardroom, an intimidating expanse of glass and steel overlooking Fifth Avenue. 12 board members sat around a long mahogany table, all older, all seasoned, all skeptical. At the head sat Victor Bradford, the interim chairman appointed before Eleanor's passing. His silver hair was slicked back, his suit expensive, his expression carved from stone.
Mrs. Marlowe, Victor said, not bothering to stand. We appreciate your presence given recent events. Recent events. A sanitized way to say public humiliation.
Sienna took her seat, but her hands trembled slightly. Landon set a reassuring hand on her arm before stepping back to stand behind her. Victor adjusted his glasses.
We've convened to discuss the company's image, which has suffered due to your personal circumstances. Sienna felt heat rise in her face. A false article published by my estranged husband. Regardless, Victor continued bluntly, the board is concerned, investors are anxious, and Marlowe Global cannot be jeopardized by emotional instability. A few members nodded. Sienna swallowed hard. My grandmother entrusted me with this company. She believed I could lead it. Your grandmother was sentimental, Victor said. Business is not sentiment. A sharp ache pierced her chest. I'm capable. You're untested, another board member interjected, and public perception is not in your favor. Victor clasped his hands. Therefore, we propose appointing a temporary guardian of your shares and authority until you are more stable. Sienna's breath caught. A guardian? I'm 27.
A legal adult. This is about optics, not age, Landon stepped forward.
This is illegal. You cannot strip control without cause. Victor smirked. Care to test that? The bylaws allow reassessment if an heir threatens shareholder value. A murmur of agreement traveled around the table. Sienna felt her throat tighten. You're stealing what my grandmother built. We're preserving it, Victor replied calmly. Her vision blurred, not with tears, but with fury. She wouldn't let them erase her like Grayson had tried to. Suddenly, the boardroom doors swung open. A young woman, flushed and breathless, rushed inside carrying a tablet. I'm sorry to interrupt, she said, but you need to see this immediately. Victor frowned. We are in a confidential session. The woman didn't back down. This is about Mrs. Marlowe. Sienna's stomach twisted.
What is it?
It's Grayson Holt, the woman said, voice shaking.
He's gone on national television.
Landon's eyes darkened. What did he do?
The assistant handed Sienna the tablet. On screen, Grayson sat confidently in a TV studio, cameras pointed at him, his voice smooth and cold. I'm speaking today because I fear for my children's safety, he said. Their mother is unraveling. Sienna's breath shattered. And Grayson was about to say something that could destroy her entire future, unless she stopped him first. Sienna's hand shook so hard, the tablet nearly slipped from her fingers. On screen,
Grayson Holt sat in a polished studio under flattering lights, wearing a charcoal suit and a carefully practiced mask of concern. The host leaned forward, hanging onto every poisonous word he spilled.
I stayed silent as long as I could, Grayson said solemnly. But I can't ignore what's happening anymore. My children are in danger. Their mother, she's not well. A clean, rehearsed lie delivered with the confidence of a man who had never been held accountable. The host nodded sympathetically. You're saying Sienna Marlowe is unstable? Grayson exhaled, as if the truth pained him. She suffered a severe psychological break after giving birth. I've witnessed episodes, hallucinations, violent mood swings. I've filed for custody because I fear she could harm herself or the twins. The studio audience gasped. Sienna's breath hitched, her throat burning. How can he say that? Victor Bradford folded his arms. Perception is power, Mrs. Marlowe. This interview will influence investors. Your leadership is now a liability. Landon shot him a lethal glare. You're basing corporate decisions on a tabloid performance? But Victor wasn't interested in fairness, only optics. And Grayson had just handed him ammunition. The host continued. You also mentioned concerns about her sudden inheritance. Grayson nodded gravely. $68 billion is a lot for anyone. But for someone already fragile, it's destabilizing. She's paranoid, erratic. There were nights she screamed for hours. That never happened, Sienna whispered, voice breaking. On screen, Grayson delivered the final blow. I just want to save my children. If the court doesn't intervene, I fear it will be too late. The audience murmured in horror. The camera zoomed in on his sorrowful expression. A perfect performance. A deadly one. Sienna felt tears sting her eyes, but Landon gently took the tablet from her before she dropped it. This changes everything, Victor said coldly. Until this is resolved, the board cannot allow you to represent the company. Sienna turned to him, stunned. You're punishing me because he's lying? We're protecting shareholder confidence, he replied smoothly. We will vote on appointing a temporary custodian of your authority. Landon stepped forward. If you do that, you will face legal retaliation. Victor didn't blink. We'll take our chances. Sienna stared at him, her jaw trembling, not with fear, but with a rising fury that tasted metallic on her tongue. My grandmother trusted you, and this is how you repay her? Victor didn't flinch. Business is business, Mrs. Marlowe. Something inside her snapped, not in weakness, in awakening. She rose slowly, her voice quiet but razor-sharp. Landon, get the footage ready. All of it. Landon nodded. And schedule a press conference, she added. Victor's eyes widened. What are you doing? Fighting back, she said. The world heard his lies. Now they'll hear the truth. Before Victor could protest, the boardroom doors burst open again. A security guard rushed in, breathless. Mr. Pierce, Mrs. Marlowe, you need to see this, now. Landon stiffened. What happened? The guard swallowed hard. It's Grayson. He's just arrived at the courthouse. With a judge. Sienna's blood ran cold. And he was trying to get an emergency order to take the twins before she could defend herself. The courthouse loomed ahead like a gray monolith, its stone steps slick from the morning drizzle. Sienna's heart pounded as Landon helped her out of the Mercedes, the twins safely at home with two trusted Marlowe security officers. She should have been resting in bed, recovering from childbirth. Instead,
She was here, dragged into a war she never wanted.
"Stay close to me," Landon murmured, opening an umbrella above them. "He's trying to blindside you. We can't let him."
Inside, the courthouse corridors buzzed with urgency. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras flashing the second they noticed her. Questions flew like arrows. "Mrs. Marlowe, are you mentally unfit to care for your twins? Is it true CPS visited you last night? Why did your husband flee the hospital during your surgery?" Sienna lifted her chin even as her knees trembled. She refused to give Grayson the satisfaction of seeing her break. Landon gently pushed the reporters back as they made their way toward the family courtroom. But the moment they rounded the final corner, Sienna's breath hitched. Grayson stood waiting, perfect suit, perfect hair, perfect mask of paternal concern.
Beside him was Judge Abernathy, a man known for conservative rulings and long-standing connections to corporate families. A setup. A carefully staged ambush.
Grayson's lips curved into a sympathetic smile. "Sienna, you made it." Landon stepped between them. "We're here to oppose any emergency orders." Judge Abernathy lifted a hand. "Given the circumstances and recent media attention, I find it necessary to hear both parties immediately." Sienna opened her mouth, but Grayson spoke first because he always did. "Your Honor, I fear for my children. Their mother is overwhelmed, untreated, and emotionally volatile. She refused to let me see them. She locked herself away in a penthouse for days." "That's not true," Sienna snapped. "I was attacked. CPS came because you lied." Grayson interrupted smoothly. "I'm concerned she's unstable. Look at her. She's exhausted, pale,
Trembling. Landon objected, voice sharp.
"She's recovering from major surgery. That's not instability." But Grayson wasn't finished. He pulled out photos, ones taken last night, zoomed in through the penthouse windows, when the lights flickered and Sienna held the crying babies, looking distressed. Aubrey must have taken them. Sienna's stomach twisted. Grayson handed them to the judge. "These images show erratic behavior. This is not a safe environment for newborns." Judge Abernathy studied the photos impassively. Landon immediately countered. "We have hospital footage proving Mr. Holt abandoned his wife during surgery, lied about her condition, schemed with Ms. Langford, and attempted to break into her residence." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Is this footage verified?" "Yes," Landon said, "recorded by hospital security." Before Judge Abernathy could respond, the courtroom door burst open.
A woman hurried in, one Sienna recognized instantly, the head of CPS from last night.
"Your Honor," she said breathlessly, "I'm here because I must formally correct the record." Grayson stiffened. The CPS director continued. "The report filed against Mrs. Marlowe was false, malicious. Her children were found safe, healthy, well cared for. We are now investigating the anonymous caller for filing a fraudulent complaint." Whispers rippled through the hall. Judge Abernathy frowned deeply. Grayson's mask cracked. Sienna finally breathed. But then the CPS director added, "And there is something else you need to know, Your Honor. Something serious." Everyone stared at her. Her gaze locked onto Sienna. "It concerns Mr. Holt." And what she revealed next would turn the entire case upside down. The courthouse hallway fell silent. So silent, Sienna could hear her own pulse thudding in her ears.
Every set of eyes fixed on the CPS director as she shifted her folder, her expression grave.
Judge Abernathy adjusted his glasses. "What is this new information?" The director cleared her throat. "While reviewing the anonymous report,
We cross-referenced the caller's number with prior complaints, and we discovered a pattern. She paused, meeting the judge's gaze. The same number submitted multiple false reports over the last 4 years, always targeting the same individuals. Women connected to Mr. Holt. A murmur rippled through the corridor. Grayson's face drained of color. That's absurd. I haven't finished, the director said sharply. She opened her folder and pulled out printed call logs. These reports were filed in moments of financial stress or public scandal involving Holt Dynamics. Conveniently, they shifted attention away from Mr.
Holt and toward the women involved. Sienna's chest tightened.
He's done this before?
The director nodded. At least 3 times. 2 former girlfriends and 1 assistant he terminated under suspicious circumstances. Landon's expression hardened.
And the purpose was always to discredit them?
Yes, she confirmed. To paint them as unstable, jealous, or dangerous. Each case was dismissed once the truth surfaced, but the emotional and professional damage to the women was permanent. Grayson snapped, "This is character assassination. There's no proof I made those calls." The director held up another document. Actually, there is. Every call came from a number registered to Holt Dynamics' corporate account. And the last one, the one filed against Mrs. Marlowe, originated from Mr. Holt's personal extension. Gasps echoed all along the hall. Judge Abernathy stiffened visibly.
Mr. Holt, do you deny this?
Grayson's mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came out. His composure was crumbling like wet clay. Aubrey, standing several feet behind him, took a shaky step back. She had clearly not known this. Her eyes darted between the judge and Grayson, like she was watching a slow-motion explosion. The CPS director continued. Given this pattern, CPS will file a formal complaint against Mr. Holt for malicious reporting, endangerment through misuse of emergency resources, and intentional emotional harm. Sienna inhaled sharply. The ground under her feet no longer felt like it was collapsing. It felt like it was stabilizing. Judge Abernathy turned to Grayson, his voice suddenly colder than marble. Mr. Holt, these allegations significantly affect your credibility in this custody matter. Grayson's voice finally cracked. You can't do this. I can, the judge cut him off, and I will. Based on the evidence and the testimony presented, your request for emergency custody is denied. The hallway erupted in murmurs. Sienna's knees trembled with relief. Landon placed a steadying hand on her back. But Judge Abernathy wasn't done. Furthermore, he said, this court is issuing a temporary protection order preventing Mr. Holt from approaching Mrs. Marlowe or the twins until a full hearing can be conducted. Grayson's face twisted, rage, panic, humiliation all swirling into something feral. This isn't over, Sienna, he growled. But Sienna finally stood tall. Yes, Grayson, it is. Before anyone could react, Grayson shoved past the crowd, storming toward the courthouse exit, only to be met by a wall of reporters shouting questions he never wanted to answer. Cameras flashed, microphones shoved toward him, voices overlapping. Mr. Holt, did you falsify reports against multiple women? Are you under investigation by CPS? Is Holt Dynamics collapsing? His world was spiraling, but Sienna's was just beginning to rise. Landon leaned close. You just won the first battle. Sienna exhaled shakily. What now? Landon's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression shifted again. Sienna, we have a bigger problem. Her stomach dropped.
What happened now? He turned the screen toward her. A headline flashed. Marlowe Global stock falling rapidly. Board blames heiress's public scandal. And if she didn't act fast, she could lose the entire empire before the day was over. Sienna barely had time to breathe before the car sped back to Marlowe Global headquarters.
The city outside the tinted windows blurred into streaks of silver and blue, matching the hollow ache spreading in her chest. "Stock is dropping fast," Landon said, scrolling through his phone. "The board is panicking. Bradford is already rallying votes to strip your authority." Sienna pressed a hand to her sternum, steadying her breath. "He's using Grayson's interview as leverage." "Exactly," Landon replied. "He's framing you as a liability. If the stock continues to fall, the board will call an emergency vote. And if I lose that vote, I lose the company." "Yes." The elevator doors opened onto the top floor. Through the glass walls, she could already see board members gathering, their gestures sharp and frantic. As Sienna entered the boardroom, the chatter died instantly. Victor Bradford stood at the head of the table like a king, waiting to dethrone a rival. "Mrs. Marlowe," he said, voice clipped. "Your presence is required. The situation is urgent." Sienna lifted her chin, hiding the tremble in her hands. "I'm aware of the situation." Victor tapped the tablet in front of him. "Our stock has fallen 8% since Mr. Holt's interview aired. Investors are questioning your stability and competence." "I have evidence proving Grayson lied," Sienna replied. "Footage, reports, legal documentation." "That may help in court," Victor cut in. "But markets react to perception, not truth." The board murmured in agreement. Landon stepped forward. "If you remove Mrs. Marlowe, you open yourselves to a massive legal and financial backlash. Her controlling shares were granted directly by Eleanor Marlowe. Attempting to sidestep her authority could trigger a trust violation." Victor's smile was thin. "Only if she proves capable of fulfilling the obligations attached to those shares." Sienna forced down the knot in her throat. "Tell me what you want." Victor gestured to the screen. A list of demands projected onto the glass wall. Restrictions, oversight committees, temporary custodianship of her decision-making power. They wanted her to become a figurehead, powerless, decorative, like her grandmother was never meant to be. "This is unacceptable," Landon snapped. "It's a coup." Victor ignored him. "We will now vote. All those in favor of transferring Mrs. Marlowe's authority to the board, pending psychological evaluation, raise your hand." 7 hands went up immediately. Sienna's heart sank. Landon whispered, "We need one more vote to block it, just one." But the final undecided board member, a woman in her 50s named Charlotte Hale, stared down at her manicured nails, conflicted, but leaning toward fear, not fairness. Victor smiled. Victory was seconds away. Until a voice echoed from the doorway. "Before you vote, you should hear the truth." Everyone turned. A tall man with silver hair and a commanding presence stepped into the room. Sienna gasped. "Mr. Whitaker?" He was Eleanor Marlowe's lifelong attorney and the executor of her private trust. Whitaker set a heavy envelope onto the table. "This," he said, "is Eleanor's sealed directive. It contains instructions for moments exactly like this." Victor stiffened. "That's impossible. She left no such directive." Whitaker's eyes hardened. "She left it with me, and by law, it supersedes every motion you plan to make today." Sienna's pulse surged. Because what was written inside that envelope would shift the entire balance of power, and no one in that room was prepared for it.
The boardroom fell into a stunned silence as Mr. Whitaker placed the sealed envelope on the polished mahogany table. Even the city noise outside seemed to hush, as if New York itself leaned closer to hear what came next. Victor Bradford's voice cracked slightly. "This is highly irregular. Eleanor never mentioned a directive." Whitaker's expression didn't stir. Eleanor Marlowe anticipated betrayal long before any of you imagined it. She understood power. She understood greed. And she knew one day her heir would face wolves dressed in suits. A few board members shifted uncomfortably. He slid the envelope toward Sienna. "Mrs.
Marlowe, this is addressed to you."
Her breath hitched. For a moment she simply stared at her grandmother's elegant handwriting. Steady, looping strokes she hadn't seen in decades. Her throat tightened as she carefully opened the seal. Inside was a letter and a notarized document stamped with the Marlowe crest. Sienna unfolded the letter slowly.
My dearest Sienna, if you are reading this, it means the world has finally revealed its teeth.
Her eyes blurred with tears as she continued reading. Eleanor had written about strength, about survival, about the burdens placed on women who inherited empires men believed should belong to them. She warned her granddaughter that power would draw enemies, and sometimes those enemies would be people pretending to protect the company. Sienna's fingers tightened around the paper.
Eleanor's final lines struck like lightning. I grant you full, irrevocable authority over Marlowe Global. Any attempt to remove you shall be considered a violation of my trust, and the company will be immediately transferred into a private foundation under your sole control. The board will lose all voting rights. Permanently. A gasp rippled across the room. Victor lunged forward. This is outrageous! That would dissolve our governance structure. Whitaker held up the notarized document. This wasn't merely a letter. This was legally executed, witnessed, and filed with a private trust court. If the board attempts to remove her without incontrovertible cause, Marlowe Global ceases to be a public company. You all lose your positions. Charlotte Hale, previously undecided, leaned back with wide eyes. Eleanor planned for this, she whispered. She planned for predators, Whitaker corrected, and she knew exactly who would reveal themselves. Victor's face flushed crimson. You think we're predators? We are trying to stabilize the company. Landon stepped beside Sienna. No, you are trying to steal it from her. Victor pounded his fist on the table. This changes nothing. This changes everything, Sienna said quietly. Her voice was different now, steady, resonant, unmistakably in command. She rose from her seat, Eleanor's letter in hand, and faced the board. I will not step aside. I will not surrender my authority. And from this moment forward, Marlowe Global will be led by integrity, not manipulation, not fear, and not men who seek to profit from my pain. The room vibrated with tension. Victor opened his mouth to argue, but the boardroom doors burst open for the third time that day. A security officer rushed in, breathless. Mrs. Marlowe, you need to see this immediately. It's about Holt Dynamics. Sienna stiffened. What happened? The officer swallowed hard. It just collapsed, completely. Trading has been halted. Grayson Holt is missing. And when Sienna heard where he was last seen, the final battle became unavoidable. The words echoed in Sienna's mind like a siren. Holt Dynamics collapsed. Grayson Holt is missing. Gasps erupted around the boardroom, but Sienna felt the world narrow to a single point of dread sitting at the base of her spine. Grayson was cruel, manipulative, destructive,
but he was still the father of her children. And a man that desperate was capable of doing almost anything. "Where was he last seen?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. The security officer swallowed. "Manhattan Bridge." Landon's eyes sharpened instantly. Was he alone? "No, sir."
A witness reported seeing him with a briefcase and shouting into a phone. Sienna's stomach twisted. She knew that pattern. When cornered, Grayson lashed out at the world, then spiraled into self-pity and desperation. Victor muttered, "If he's gone off the deep end, the press will bury us all." Whitaker shot him a cold glare. "A man's life is unraveling, and your concern is stock value?" Victor shrank back. Sienna stepped toward the elevator. "We're going to find him." Landon placed a reassuring hand on her arm. "You don't have to be involved in this. He made his choices." "He's the father of my children," she whispered. "My babies will grow up one day and ask what happened. I need to know I did everything I could, even if he didn't deserve it." Landon nodded, admiration flickering in his eyes. "Then I'm coming with you."
Minutes later, the Mercedes sped across Manhattan as rain began to fall, streaking the windows like a veil. Sirens wailed in the distance. Sienna gripped the armrest, her thoughts racing. "What if he hurts himself?" she whispered. "What if he tries something else?" Landon countered quietly. "Grayson never accepts defeat." As they neared the Manhattan Bridge, police cars and barricades came into view. Officers directed traffic away from the scene. Sienna's breath hitched. They parked, and she hurried toward the railing where a cluster of officers stood. One officer stopped her. "Ma'am, this area is restricted." "I'm Sienna Marlowe," she said, chest rising sharply. "His wife." "Ex-wife," Landon corrected gently. The officer's expression softened. "Mr. Holt is unstable right now. He's on the pedestrian walkway." Sienna pushed forward until she saw him.
Grayson stood near the edge, rain streaming down his face, hair plastered to his forehead. The briefcase hung loosely from his hand, his tie crooked, shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked nothing like the polished CEO who humiliated her on national television. He looked lost. "Grayson," she called out. He turned slowly, eyes hollow. When he saw her, something fractured inside him. "Sienna," his voice cracked. "Everything's gone. The company, the money, everything." She swallowed. "That doesn't mean your life is over." He laughed bitterly. "Doesn't it? You won, Sienna. You have everything. I have nothing." She stepped closer, rain soaking through her coat. "This isn't about winning or losing. It's about our children. They need a father, not this version of you." His grip tightened on the briefcase. "I don't deserve them." "No," she said softly. "Not the way you are now." "But you can still choose who you want to become." For a moment, hope flickered in his eyes. Then an officer shouted, "Ma'am, step back, he's reaching into the case." Grayson snapped open the briefcase, and Sienna gasped at what she saw inside. Because what Grayson had been hiding there would change the final outcome of everything. For a moment, the world stood still, rain falling in silver sheets, the distant hum of traffic muffled by the storm, and Grayson Holt trembling as he opened the briefcase. Sienna braced herself for something catastrophic. Instead, her breath left her in a small, stunned gasp. Inside were folders, hundreds of them, stuffed with financial statements, forged signatures, illegal transfers, bribes, investor manipulation, and documents tying Holt Dynamics to years of quiet corruption. Evidence that would destroy him.
and evidence he clearly intended to destroy before anyone found. "It's all here," he whispered, voice hollow. "Everything I did, everything I tried to hide. They're going to arrest me, Sienna." Landon stepped closer, rain soaking his suit. "Turn yourself in, Grayson. Face the consequences. It's the only thing left." Grayson looked between them. His ex-wife, the man who protected her, the bridge railing gleaming behind him. He was cornered by truth, exposed in every direction. Sienna softened her voice. "If you ever loved me, if you ever loved them, don't make our children grow up with a tragedy. Make them grow up knowing their father finally chose the right thing." That broke him. Slowly, shakily, Grayson closed the briefcase and stepped away from the railing. Officers rushed to secure it as he let out a ragged breath. "I'm sorry," he whispered, not to Sienna, but to the children who weren't there to hear it. The officers led him away. He didn't fight, didn't shout, didn't look back. For the first time, Grayson Holt finally surrendered to the consequences he spent years running from. Sienna exhaled, her entire body trembling with relief, grief, release. Landon wrapped a steady arm around her, guiding her back toward the car. "You did the right thing," he murmured. "I did what a mother does," she replied softly. "I protected my children." 2 weeks later, sunlight spilled through the grand windows of the Plaza Hotel ballroom as journalists filled the space. Cameras lined the aisle, investors, executives, employees, all waiting. Sienna stepped onto the stage in an elegant navy dress, hair soft around her shoulders, no longer the fragile woman in a hospital gown. Landon stood just behind her, not as a shield, but as a quiet force at her back. She faced the world with calm power. "Thank you for being here," she began. "Today marks a new beginning, not just for me, but for Marlowe Global. The lies are over, the threats are over, and fear no longer runs this company." Applause erupted. She continued. "I stand here not because I inherited billions, but because I chose to rise when the world wanted me broken." More applause, louder this time. "And to my children," she added, voice softening, "everything I build from this day forward is for you." When the conference ended, Landon approached her with a rare, warm smile. "You were extraordinary," he said. Sienna looked up at him, eyes glimmering. "I didn't do it alone." The air felt different, lighter, full of possibility. Landon hesitated, then gently took her hand. "Sienna, when you're ready, I'd like to be more than the man standing behind you." Her heart fluttered, not in fear, but in hope. "For the first time," she whispered, "I think I'm ready for something good." Landon smiled. Outside, Manhattan glowed beneath a clear sky, the kind that only appears after the worst storms have passed. And as Sienna stepped forward into her new life, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She had survived, she had won, and she had finally come home to herself. And just like that, our story comes to a close. But you're still here with me, aren't you? If you're listening all the way to this moment, then something in Sienna's journey must have touched your heart in a quiet, personal way. Maybe you've been betrayed. Maybe you've had to rebuild yourself from nothing. Maybe life has pushed you into storms you never asked for. What Sienna learned is the same lesson the Stoics whispered centuries ago. You may not control what happens, but you can always control how you rise from it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The obstacle becomes the way."
And that's exactly what happened. Every wound became her doorway to strength. Every loss became her rebirth. So if you're going through something right now, remember, you are allowed to outgrow the people who hurt you. You are allowed to choose peace over chaos. And you are worthy of a life that feels like home. If this story resonated with you, if it healed even a small corner of your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that remind us we are stronger, wiser, and more resilient than we think. And hey, I'm glad you stayed till the end.